Occasionally, I'll reflect on what it was like when I was starting out writing. Like, what were the things that I was wrestling with, or that I wish someone would have told me, or that I could somehow do better. And so that's what I want to share with you. So I'm going to share with you 5 tips that are related to your mindset with how you approach mentally, how you approach writing, and then 5 tips for practicing, like the doing of it. So some thinking, some doing, that's what we're going to talk about. Thank you for liking, subscribing. I really do appreciate it. If you have some best advice or worst advice you've ever had, put them in the comments below. Those are always enjoyable to look at and to be encouraged by. So please be sure to do that. If you've watched other videos, I don't like to dilly-dally. Let's jump in. When you're starting out as a writer, it is really hard because there's so many things going through your mind. You're trying to keep rules straight, and is this a rule? Is that a rule? And you hear conflicting advice, and you get conflicting information, and this book says do that thing, and this book says do that thing, and this website and this person, and it's all kind of a jumbled mess. And some people will tell you, you know what? It's really all about your mindset. And other people are like, no, it's about doing it. Get your butt in the chair. You got to write. And honestly, it's both. You can't have it all be about mental stuff. It's not all about that. It's not just how your mindset is, but it's also not about just getting all the skills, right? I have to approach it in the right way. I have to deal with it in the right way. So some of the things I'm going to tell you, I'm going to try to speak truth in love. So hopefully this doesn't step on your toes too much, but these are things I wish I would have heard and digested when I was starting out. So first we're going to start with 5 things about your mindset, the mentality, and how you approach writing. The first one I'm going to start with is probably one of the more difficult ones, but I kind of want to get it out of the way, but it's also really important. And it's the mindset of humility. And people misunderstand humility. They think that being humble is debasing yourself or making yourself less than you actually are. That's not what it is. Humility is properly understanding who you are in relationship to other people, understanding your skills and your talents in relationship to other people. Part of my advice then that goes with humility and having a mindset of humility is maybe think about it like this. You are not the exception. And I'm sorry, and I know that hurts to hear because all of you have these dreams of hey, the first script I'm going to write, I'm going to sell for, millions of dollars. It's going to set me for life. And it's no. That's not really how it works. Does it work for a few people? Well, yeah, that's why you hear about them, but that's not the common way, right? You are not the exception. I am not the exception. We have to work at it. We have to practice. We have to hone our craft, okay? I have to have a proper understanding of where I'm at. So some people think when they're starting out ooh, screenwriting's not that hard. I can read a couple books. I start writing. I get all the way to the end. I've got a great script. Who do I sell this to? Where do I find an agent? It's no, slow your roll there, bruh. You are way ahead of the game. You need to step back, and step back. Figure out where are you really at in relation to other people. Is your script really at the caliber that others are? Maybe it is. Maybe you are the exception. But for the most of us, we are not. So don't think of yourself as the exception. Be humble. Have a humble mindset when you approach writing. This also helps if you sell your script and it starts to get made because you aren't really involved. You're not involved. Other people are making decisions. It's kind of out of your hands. And some writers get really upset about that and they don't work too often. Okay? So you have to just be good with that. Hey, I did my job. I did the best job I could. Here it is. Off you go. And having a humble mindset will get you a long way down the road. Number 2, develop good habits. You want to start out doing the right thing. Don't get into the habit of doing the bad habits because it's harder to break out of those and start doing the good ones. So have a mindset of, I want to try to establish really good habits. That means having a regular time to write, a regular place to write. Those things are helpful and they help you show up. That doesn't mean you have to write for 3 hours every day. Maybe your schedule, because you're just doing this as a hobby or you're doing this on the side, maybe you only have 30 minutes a day. That's fine. Set aside specific 30 minutes every day to work on your writing, or to work on you, or to work on your knowledge of improving your writing. Some people will say, oh, I write every day for 30 minutes. Well, when you're starting out, it's really hard to do that. So don't think of it as you're writing every day for 30 minutes. Just develop a good habit of setting aside time to write, or to work on your writing, or to work on you as a writer. Those are good habits to develop, especially early on. If you start having success and you can move into more of a professional career as a writer, yeah, you can spend more time, you can devote more time to things, but don't think you've got to start off with, so many hours a day or so many pages a day. Don't put that pressure on yourself. I'm just going to work 30 minutes every day. That's it. And if you work on yourself and on your writing for 30 minutes, whether you're working on a story or working on skills or reading or learning, whatever it is, you're going to get better, I promise. Number 3, and this one is sort of related to number 2, but I like to think about it like this. Novices play, professionals plan. So if you're just starting out, you're just like, I don't know, I'm just going to start writing a story. That's totally cool. You're a novice. It's totally cool to do that. If you're just doing it as a hobby, it's totally cool to just be like, oh, I have this idea for a movie. I'm going to sit down and write it. And you sit down, you start writing it. That's perfectly fine to do that. But if you're wanting to be a professional, if you're wanting to move in a professional direction, professionals plan. We are very intentional. Writing takes a lot of time. I don't want to spend my time writing something that is not even going to have a chance to sell, right? I might really like the story about this high school janitor, right? And, just their overcoming social pressures and becoming a respected member of the school community. I might really love that story, but it's not going to sell. Unless the janitor is a spy, right? And they're spying on kids of other now that's more higher concept, right? Now I can write that story and I might have a chance to do something with it. So I want to plan. Novices play, professionals plan. So if that helps you to wrestle with how you're spending your time or how you're approaching your story, great. Because if you're going to try to be a professional, then you should approach it in a professional manner from the get-go, because you want to develop good habits. That was number 2. Number 4, different is better than better. Different and better are the best. If you have 2 scripts of equal quality, okay, they're both just as good. They're both good stories. The one that's a little different, the one that has a little different spin, the one that has a little more of a unique voice, the one that has a little different tone, that's the one that's going to get bought, not the other one. It can be really good, but the one that's different is better. Now, that's if they're equal, right? But what if this one is a better script and this different script is just not as good? Well, guess what? The different one still sells. Different is better than better. But let's say you're competing against someone else that's got a different idea. You have a different idea, they have a different idea. But theirs is just better, and yours is great. Now yours sells. So, different is better than better. Different and better are the best. Hopefully that makes sense. So, as you're thinking about stories, don't just think about the stories that people might say, oh, you should think about this, you should write about this. Try to find a different spin on it, a little way to make it stand out just a little more, because different is better. Okay, the last one, and this is going to sound a little weird, and I don't mean this literally, okay? This is metaphorically. Be willing to be naked. Be naked on the page. That's where your heart is. I would tell my writing students when I'm teaching writing, I will tell them, I want to see your beating, bleeding heart pumping on the page. If it's not dripping, you're not writing. It's not you. You have to be willing to put your full self in, warts and all, the stuff you like about yourself, the stuff you don't like about yourself. It's going to come through in your writing. And if you're not willing to be vulnerable, if you're not willing to be naked, you're going to have a hard time being successful. Because one of the things that makes scripts different is a unique, transparent, and vulnerable voice over somebody that's just a little stoic and standoffish from their script. I'm just writing a script. It's a really good story. Yeah, it's really good. But this one's better because it's different, because they have a unique voice. They're willing to put their beating, bleeding heart on the page. So be willing to essentially be naked, because when people are reading your stuff, they're reading the true you. All of you comes out. There's no way you can kind of hide it if you're writing like you should be writing. So you just kind of have to be willing at the get-go. Have a mindset. I'm going to be willing to be naked on the page. Just me. I'm not going to check myself. I'm just going to write the story that needs to be told and tell it the best way I can. And hopefully it's a little different. And I've developed good habits and I've learned the right things. And you're going to have and find success. Okay, 5 things to do. So this is the practice part. So how do you practice? Like, what are the things that you should be doing, like literally doing, not the mindset? What are you doing? The first thing that you need to do is you need to learn the rules. I know. I don't really like rules either, but you have to learn them. Why? Because they're the language of story and of storytelling. I have to learn what the tools are. I have to learn what things are called. I have to learn how stories are structured. I have to learn what the format is. I have to learn all that little stuff, right? So I want to devote some time and make sure that I learn those things. Writing is a craft. It's something that you have to practice to get better at. Some people are naturally good at it. They're talented at it. Some of us are not as talented. But the thing is with writing, because it's a craft, you can get there. Anybody can get there. You just got to put in the work. And if you think, oh, I'm not going to listen to all the rules, I'm not going to follow that, I'm not going to learn that, you're doing yourself a disservice. Learn the rules, learn what works, start learning how to break them. Now I can start to figure out how to work within the rules and around the rules. And when somebody gives me a note, I know what they mean because they're talking about a story thing. And when they say, yeah, your midpoint's just not so strong, I don't know what that means. What is a midpoint? I haven't learned the craft. So you need to take some time and learn the craft. 2, screenwriting and any kind of writing boils down to this. Clarity is king. You want to make sure you are being very clear in what you're trying to say. Some people will say, I'm trying to be really clever. I'm trying to, keep the reader on their toes. It's like, well, you can keep the reader on their toes in other ways, but you've got to still be clear. Because if you're not clear in your writing, if you're not communicating clearly, you're in trouble. One of the things with communicating clearly is making sure you're following format. What is the format? Screenplays look a specific way for very specific reasons. You need to know what those reasons are. That's part of learning the craft, but you also need to know what it is because the format is a tool for clarity, just like grammar, just like spelling. And if you have problems with those things, you need to work on those things or just be aware, hey, I've got to make sure I have some passes where I'm going through my script where I'm paying attention to just the grammar or just the spelling because I want to make sure that I am doing this the right way. I want to make sure I'm communicating clearly because clarity is king. At the same time, this is number 3, execution wins. So you might be very clear. And if you have a very clear screenplay and somebody else's screenplay is very clear, if their execution of their story is better, they win. So you have to pay attention to how you're executing. It's not just understanding the rules of grammar. It's not just understanding language. It's not just understanding writing. You have to take the time and appreciate it. Love it. Wrap yourself in it. If you can take the time to appreciate language and story and know how stories work and how to communicate them clearly, you'll be able to execute when it comes time to execute. And now you're going to be telling a great story. And that's what we're all after. So make sure that you are executing what you're doing. So you can't just write it and be like, hey, I'm good. I got to the end. I'm all good. Everything's great. It's like, did you really execute it? And you need to start getting feedback. Find out from other people. Is this clear? Number 2. Am I executing this properly? Number 3. So you want to make sure you are executing things. And this leads to number 4. Don't suck. I know that sounds like kind of weird on some ways. And it's like, well, I'm starting out. How do I know if I suck or not? Like, how do I know if I'm good? How do I know if I'm getting this whole writing thing figured out? How do I know if I'm there? Well, one of the ways you can do that is read other scripts. Read scripts. There's a lot of scripts online. Try to find the scripts that sold, not the scripts that are going in production. Don't use the transcribed scripts. Those are not good. You want to find scripts where you can actually see what's sold. This is what's happening. This is where you got to get to. And as the more you read, the more you start to see where you're at and where things that sold are at. And the more you practice, the faster you're going to close that gap. Okay? So, but you have to know where your benchmark is. You got to know where the not suck is. So if you are like, oh, I don't know if I'm good or not, read other scripts. Read other scripts. The other thing you can do is not settle. This is still part of the don't suck. Just don't settle. Part of being a sucky writer is settling, like, it's good enough. No, it's never good enough. You are competing against other people that are trying to sell their stories. Maybe you're like, it's good enough. Like, no, that's not good enough. Good enough doesn't do it in this industry. It doesn't. If you're just doing things good enough, you will not find success in Hollywood. You can't do that. You have to elevate your game. So you have to have an intention of when you sit down, I am not gonna suck. I'm gonna do this as best I can. If your mindset is correct, you're doing all this, you're gonna get there. I promise you're gonna get there. Okay, here's the last one. And this one is, I guess, personal to me in some ways, but I always, if you've watched other videos, you'll hear me use this phrase, tell stories that matter. That's really my last piece of advice. Tell a story that matters. Now, stories that matter can be stories that are meant to specifically just entertain. Maybe they're meant to educate people. Maybe they're meant to bring some social issue to light. But you need to tell a story that matters, and not just that matters to other people, but you got to tell one that matters to you. If the story you're telling doesn't matter to you, you're already sunk. Already sunk. You've got to tell a story that matters, and it's got to mean something to you. You got to be telling it for a reason. You got to be telling it for a purpose, because you're going to be working on it for a while, and if it sells, you're going to be working on it for a long time. If it generates interest, you're going to be working on it for a long time. You've got to love it. It's got to matter to you. But more than that, it's got to matter to other people. But the thing is, if it matters to you, you're going to be able to find somebody else that it matters to also. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to write stories that are exploitative. Don't be that writer. Strive for something higher. Strive for something better. Write a story that matters. If you're going to take the time to tell a story, you should tell one that matters. And that's really critical. And don't apologize for it. If that's what is important to you, tell that story. Pour your beating, bleeding heart out on the page, right? All those things. This is going to help you be a better writer. Hopefully this has been encouraging to you. Hopefully this has been helpful. If it has, please like, subscribe, bell, all that stuff. I do appreciate it. If you have questions or comments or anything like that, please leave those below. And if you're going to take the time to tell a story that matters. See you later.